Happy Saturday. This is Sucker Punch, hour number one of Sucker Punch with yours truly and my main man, Mr. Joe Habeeb. Before you do anything, before we start the show, I often forget to do this. So hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. All right. And whether you're new or have been here for a while, you also got to make sure you hit that notification bell because you want to know every time Joe goes live here on Ringside Reporter Live. Flagship show tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. If you're out there in the UK, it's Joe, it's Eric Lorda, it's their Sunday show. But today is the Saturday show. It is Sucker Punch Saturday, hour number one here, hour number two on my channel. And hour number one, we're going to be talking about the movements in and around the boxing landscape with a focus on what's been happening here in the United States, where two of the three major players in the U.S., Top Rank, PBC, the other one being Matchroom USA, Matchroom Boxing, which is staging a big show next week, a unification fight at 147 between Stanionis and Boots Ennis from Atlantic City's Boardwalk Hall. But today we're focused on PBC, synonymous with Mr. Al Heyman, Top Rank Boxing, synonymous with Bob Arum. They look like they might be working together. Joe, talk to me about your thoughts on this. Talk to me about what you've been observing from Boston as it relates to the PBC and Top Rank and the potential of a unification, because I'm going to be turning to what Hall of Famer Bob Arum has to say about it in a moment. But give me your initial thoughts, Joe. Go for it.
Well, this was the only alternative. I said that this whole involvement with Turki Alalshikh and Dana White and Nick Khan, the alliance, I told you that this was going to put the most pressure on Top Rank and PBC, because Top Rank is going to be losing their television deal with ESPN, so they're going to be shopping around. That's number one. And number two, PBC has not really put on a lot of dates, even with their Amazon deal. The majority of the shows have been pay-per-view, and now they're only recently just starting to do non-pay-per-view shows, so they haven't been doing a lot of shows. So in terms of just competition, from what we've seen in 2024 going into 2025, the Zone has really shored up its resources. Turki Alalshikh's invested in the Zone himself. And now you have Frank Warren on the Zone. You have Golden Boy on the Zone. You have Eddie Hearn on the Zone. So all of the promoters, the majority of them are on the Zone. And in terms of sheer volume of shows, they're just putting on so much more shows than Top Rank and PBC combined. So that's the thing. And a lot of the biggest events in the past year were on the Zone. The two, you could argue the two biggest events were the Tyson Fury Alexander Usyk fights. A lot of people want to criticize the numbers, the global numbers, but I challenge anyone in 2024 to find a show done on American soil that did more pay-per-views globally than those Tyson Fury fights, right? So again,
well, not to mention Better Be versus
correct, but again, again. This was the only alternative. What else was PBC and Top Rank going to do? Because if you don't want to give the Zone exclusivity, which Top Rank has openly said they don't want to do, then what incentive does the Zone have to work with you? I'm sure they'll do an event here and there, but they're not going to get guaranteed dates consistently like these other promoters are getting. So they're in a situation where they have no choice but to work together because of I think Turki Alalshikh doing what he's doing and doing what he did, basically rallying the wagons, so to speak, around each other, and because of the alliances that he's already created. So these two entities, PBC and Top Rank, at the moment appear to be the odd men out. So we'll see how it plays out.
Before we get to the statements made a week ago and even more recently from Bob Arum as it relates to working with the PBC, what do you think went wrong with the PBC's deal with Amazon because you were optimistic about it. I was optimistic about it. I thought that we'd be seeing at least one show a month. I don't think that would have been a crazy number. One show a month and a pay-per-view sprinkled in here or there. It ended up being, what was it last year? 3 cards, 2 of
Yeah.
which were paid. It was either 3 or 4 cards, and pretty much all of them, other than the Tim Tszyu fight, where he got knocked out by Murtazaliev, right? Were pay-per-view shows, right? Whether it was Tank Davis against Frank Martin, right? Whether it was what was the other one that they had? Benavidez, was Benavidez Plant on there? I don't even remember that. I can't even remember all of the cards.
I think
I just
Benavidez
know.
Andre. Benavidez
Sorry, that's the
Andre.
one.
Yeah.
Benavidez Andrade. So it
Yeah.
was like very few shows, and all of the shows pretty much were pay per view. When I thought we were actually gonna get to finally take advantage of the Amazon Prime app, a lot of people in this country are subscribed to Amazon Prime here in the United States.
Yeah.
As part of your Amazon Prime membership, you get access to the Amazon Prime streaming channel as part of that subscription. I'm like, wow, great. Showtime's even boxing, but at least it's just they're going to be pivoting seamlessly, or so I thought, to the Amazon streaming app. And nothing was on the Amazon streaming app.
Well,
I even ended up watching like the undercard of the undercard fights on YouTube right before the pay-per-view. So it's like, what went wrong with the Amazon thing?
I mean, they didn't put out the shows, so that's I mean, it's that simple. I mean, they just didn't put
They
give
put on
give
fewer shows than they did in their last year on Showtime.
correct.
They put out fewer shows than they put out on Fox the last year of the Fox deal.
And in a lot of cases, PBC's done this in the past. Whenever they transition to another network, they don't. There's a dip in their shows. So we'll see what happens in 2025. But again, everyone's talking about the TKO boxing, and everyone's putting so much emphasis on the pay to the fighters. But again, like, we don't really know what the actual pay is going to be. And I get the sense that if you're giving guaranteed purses of a specific amount, even for undercard fighters, which a lot of these undercard fighters on these shows do not get, right? That's a positive. But not only that, they're not going to start this to 2026. So they have a strategy here. I think a lot of it has to do with, and this has been mentioned, they're waiting out to see whose contracts run out with Top Rank. And PBC, they don't have generally contracts. They do fight the fight with all their fighters primarily. And every now and then they'll do a 2 or 3 fight deal with a big star like Canelo. But for the most part, a lot of these PBC fighters are going to be free agents already, from what I understand, based on the structure of the deal.
That's how Deontay Wilder ended up doing the Riyadh season deal, just to give you an example, right?
So what they're doing right now, and I know Deontay Wilder is no longer working with them, and they from what I understand, a lot of they're losing fighters. They're losing fighters in droves over there, and they continue to lose fighters in droves because they had too many fighters working with Al Heyman. So, quote unquote, in this advisory situation where he doesn't have to guarantee them fights because he's not a licensed manager or a licensed promoter. So there's no obligation when you work with this guy that he's going to guarantee you any dates. And that's, as a result, you saw a lot of those guys who were shelved. So I guess what I'm trying to say.
Pause it right there. Pause it right.
Finish the point. Let me finish.
Pause it right there.
Let me finish the point. So I guess what I'm saying is, what TKO is doing right now is strategizing, and I think what they're doing is putting together a plan where they're just going to scoop up a lot of these fighters, right? And they need time to kind of structure. So as I'm saying right now, they're working behind the scenes, in my opinion, with a lot of these fighters, and it's going to take time, and they're going to strategize it. And while they're putting it together, everyone's like, "Oh, who's going to go over there? Who's going to go over there?" Again, I suspect a lot of these PBC fighters are going to go over there, and some of the top ranked fighters will go over there. And to sit there and say that everyone's going to be locked into a specific pay. I don't think that's true. I think if there is going to be big fights, I'm sure if they're going to be pay-per-view, there's going to be back-end revenue, and they're going to adjust these purses. I don't think these purses, like people are implying, are etched in stone, right? And lastly, I've also heard rumors that HBO Max is considering jumping back into boxing too. So there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes right now that are being talked about that have not been actually confirmed. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it's actually major fighters that have been shelved. I mean, we're talking about undisputed champions in Charlo. We're talking about former world champions, uh, even current world champions being stripped of their titles. Like the inactivity issue there does run pretty deep, Joe. Now,
And
go for it.
and lastly, when I talked about this whole TKO thing, and everyone was concerned, they were throwing Eddie Hearn's name in there, they were throwing Frank Warren's name in there, and they were talking about boxing globally. I think what Dana White, Turki Alalshikh, and Nick Khan, they identified a weakness, right? And that's the American boxing market right now. And I always said I don't think Turki Alalshikh is really gonna change that much what he's doing with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. And again, Frank Warren just signed an exclusivity deal with DAZN. So again, there is a long-term plan that's going to continue to go on with the, boxing in the UK. So they're not going to really adjust much or change much in the foreign markets. I think, as I said, this TKO thing was basically geared towards the American market. That's where they're seeing the weakness. That's where they're seeing the opportunity. And most of these American fighters, they're the ones that have the most inactivity. And also, all you got to do is look at the Forbes list. Like Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Naomi Inoue, those were the top earning athletes in boxing. And I think Tyson Fury, if I'm not mistaken, was in the top 5 this year for top earning athletes. There's no Americans in there. There's no Tank Davis. There's no David Benavidez.
There's just Canelo.
And there's Canelo, and he's beneath all of those other guys. For the first time in a long time, you have a UK fighter as the number one earner in the sport. Right? So again, what is that telling you? That the UK and globally, like international boxing as a whole, kicked the shit out of USA boxing last year.
Yeah, well, it's been like that for a while, including on the amateur level to talk about USA boxing. But let's have a quick listen to this before we go to Bob Arum. Here's Oscar De La Hoya talking about exactly what you were just talking about, Joe. Here we go.
Asking me for my opinion and thoughts on Dana White attempting to enter the boxing space. Again! And after collecting as much information as possible, I'm finally ready to answer. Okay, here's the truth.
Bruh.
You can't run a boxing organization when you don't have any fighters.
Bruh.
And right now, TKO and Dana have 0 fighters.
What?
This means they're likely in it for the long haul and are trying to build something years from now when fighters' contracts come up with current promoters.
Bruh.
And they will try to start attempting to sign them.
Come on now, dawg.
What else do we know? TKO's supposed fighter pay / salaries were leaked a few weeks ago. And if these are real, holy shit!
Come on, man.
Dana's gonna have several problems. Number 1, no fighter is going to fight for these pennies. The majority of their prospects will fight 1 or 2 times a year and be forced to survive on minimum pay.
You're broke.
And keep in mind, they will be fighting tough fights. Dana said, the best must fight the best.
Bruh.
So their careers will be short. Number 2, no pay-per-view fighter will fight for $750,000. You're telling me the Canelos and the Ryans of this world are going to agree to this kind of pay cut?
We might not like it.
No! And most importantly, number 3, if these numbers are real,
Bruh.
the UFC fighters will be so pissed. The TKO boxers will be getting paid so much more than they are. UFC fighters are already disgusted with how little they get paid for putting their lives on the line. If you recall, Dana already tried several times to get into the boxing space in the past. Remember Zuffa, which never even got off the ground?
The reason you've never seen me do anything is because
when Dana doesn't have the funding and the business brains already in place, like the Fertitas or Turkey, he always fails. How about the Ultimate Surfer?
No!
Or the Power Snap?
they didn't do well with stuff.
As for Dana's character,
All right, I'm going to leave the Dana character part out of it, Joe, and just leave it to that. But what are your thoughts on Oscar's points over there? Do you consider them to be salient points?
Not at all, because here's the thing. Again, those PBC fighters, just like when they were fighting under the Golden Boy banner, when he lost every single one of them because he did because the way they operate is they don't have contracts, so they can go where a lot of them have. Either they leave Al Heyman, or they decide to continue to work with Al Heyman. So these guys over at PBC they don't have contracts, so they could go. So a lot of these PBC fighters, again, it's not rocket science. They're going to get a lot of PBC fighters, and they're probably going to get some top rank fighters. It's not going to be that hard, in my opinion, to get fighters. And Power Slap, as he is doing very well. That's so whether you like it or not, I'm not a fan of it. I don't watch it. I think it's a little. It's not my cup of tea.
It would be more interesting if the person was allowed to defend themselves. Like, I don't understand what's so great about seeing one guy with his hands down get slapped by another guy and he's not able to defend himself. Like, there's no skill involved in that.
Yeah. So again, like, he could say what he wants about the purses, this and that, but I challenge, like, how much do fighters make on your cards? I mean, who's besides Ryan Garcia and Virgil Ortiz, right?
Ramirez, maybe.
How much are these guys really making? I don't think Ramirez has ever touched $1 million yet. So are you paying
Arnold Barboza?
Are you paying Arnold Barboza, and are you paying Jose Ramirez more than $750,000 for a fight? That's number one. And number two, the only way these guys are able to make big money now is because of Turki Alalshikh. Even you've bent the knee to Turki Alalshikh too.
Zurdo, maybe. What about Zurdo? Zurdo's seen the big bucks, probably, right, Joe?
I mean, again,
it is Zurdo.
He's on. They're being subsidized by Turki Alalshikh. So even he himself,
Oscar Collazo, maybe.
Yeah, these guys are not making $750,000.
Oscar Duarte, maybe.
They're not making more than $750,000.
What about El Camarón Williams Zepeda, we talked about last week?
He's not
big
making
bucks.
He's not making more than $750,000. So again, who's making the big bucks over there? Ryan Garcia, and maybe Virgil Ortiz is now making some starting to make some good money. But once
Charles
again,
Conwell,
no,
O'Hara Davies.
Virgil Ortiz was just on a Riyadh season card, and that's how he was able to get paid the big bucks. So
Kid Austin,
nope.
Come on, Kid Austin must be making more than that than that UFC boxing contract, right?
None of these guys are over there are making. Even when Boots Ennis was fighting over at PBC, he was making like $500,000 a fight.
So you're saying if you were Eric Priest, you'd rather be fighting for TKO than for Golden Boy?
Depends. It depends. If I can get paid consistently and get the dates. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If Golden Boy was doing was able to fund and pay fighters exorbitant amount of money, then why are these fighters on Turki Alalshikh?
So if you were Alexis Rocha, you'd be signing up for TKO boxing and trying to get out of your Golden Boy deal.
It depends what's on the table. You have to see what's on the table, because ask yourself this: why is Arnold Barboza and Jose Ramirez being funded by Turki Alalshikh? If De La Hoya had enough money, if De La Hoya's deal with DAZN was enough, why would Turki Alalshikh have to come in and subsidize them?
I mean, Turkey's offering the big money.
That's right. So again,
but Turkey doesn't have enough spots for all of these guys. Like Darius Fulgham, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember him? Was he super middleweight? Right? I'm just running through the names of these Golden Boy prospects, you know. But let's see. Let's talk about Bob Arum. Let's talk about PBC. Bob Arum seems to be inclined to listen, or sorry, not listen, but to work with the PBC. You had one more thing to say on the last one? Okay, we'll remove Bob Arum for now. Go for it.
One more thing, lastly. Everyone's talking so much about Dana White here, right? But what they're missing is this is Turki Alalshikh's baby. He is the one funding it all. So he's going to be controlling the purse strings here. And you saw that all of the events that he was involved in, like the two Fury Usyk fights, right? And you look at Anthony Joshua fights. These guys were in the Forbes list. These guys were made tens of millions. Fury and Usyk made hundreds of millions of dollars, close to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, this is Turki Alalshikh's thing, and to sit there and say, and Turki Alalshikh disputed those numbers. He didn't say. He said that no official numbers have been released yet. So again, that's kind of speculation. Number one, and number two. This isn't up to Dana how much these guys get paid. It's up to Turki Alalshikh. He is the guy pulling the purse strings. And the Fertitta brothers were the ones that created all that controversy over at the UFC because they have a history of really being shrewd businessmen, union busting, and every industry that they've been involved in, they've been sued and there's been questions about how they pay workers and people that are affiliated with them. So once again, this is not the Fertitta brothers. This is Turki Alalshikh, and he's already shown you that he's willing to pay substantial amounts of money to put fights on when he wants them to be put on.
Got it. Let's go to Bob Arum. This is courtesy of Boxing Social, and he is talking about the prospects of Top Rank Boxing, his company, working with the PBC. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. Here we go.
Of a fight, a more convincing victory from Michaela Mayer. That's the fittest, strongest version of Michaela I've seen in a long time.
I agree with you. And the guy who was here did the training.
Officer tour. Where does Michaela go from here? She's done a lot.
No, she's going to fight the best available WBA title.
His performance.
He's a terrific.
He's got one eye on Boots versus Stanionis. That'd be with the fight for him. I asked him in his interview what he wants to do next. He's got one eye on Boots versus Stanionis. That'd be with the fight to make with it, a unification next.
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, again, we take into account. Our matchmakers know what they're doing, but if the fighters really want to fight a particular opponent, we try to make it happen.
I saw reports online saying that Top Rank and PBC will be working a lot closer together.
Yeah, of course.
What sort of prompted this? I know you've always worked with other promoters, but is this...
I would say, I don't know what they would say, that we always wanted to work closely with them, but now they're willing to work closely with us.
Okay. Bob Arum, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So in that one, Bob Arum is pretty much saying that it was PBC that was kind of reluctant to work with Top Rank more than the other way around, because he says that he was willing to essentially work with them all along. This is a more recent interview between Bob Arum and Sean Zeitel on Sean Zeitel's YouTube channel. I'm going to pull it up here. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. This is Sean Zeitel and Bob Arum. And then, Joe, I'm going to ask you to give your thoughts. Here we go.
And lastly, Bob, just an update on the talks between Top Rank and PBC. Have you actually spoken to Al Heyman as recently?
No, I haven't spoken to Al in a long time, but he has an able spokesperson in the Cubas. And so Carl and some of our other guys talk to the Cubas. I guess that's the way Al wants it. And so that's the level of communication.
Do Samson, who's in that sphere, the PBC sphere, said De Los Santos and Keyshawn may very well be next. Do you have an update on that?
I think so. I think I was talking to Keyshawn in the office yesterday, and he mentioned that kid's name.
Yeah. Do we have a rough outline for a date? What time of the year it should be?
I know Keyshawn's next fight is going to be in Norfolk in June.
Okay.
Early June.
Do you expect him to have as tough a time as Stevenson did with De Los Santos when you promoted that fight here 2023?
I don't know. I think.
Well, that's pretty much it, Bob. Joe. Bob Arum there, Sean Zeitel. It's not like it's not like Bob Arum's indicated anything that I didn't think that was already the case. Other than, I guess, the fact that the PBC is really more keen now to work with Top Rank. Because if you listen to him there, he's saying, listen, we've always wanted to work with Top Rank, but now, with PBC. But now it's the PBC that seems more inclined to work with us. Go for it, Joe.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talk about the free market, and people that aren't fans of the free market, they're very critical of how it works, and they don't like how competition. They kind of want everyone to be equal. But think about this. This is the benefit of the free market when the free market is doing what it's supposed to do. And that's being competitive. Without Turki Alalshikh, I don't think this would be happening right now. So Turki Alalshikh is creating an environment in which these guys have to work together. It's existential for both companies for them to do so at this point, because if they don't, they're going to get crushed, right? So they need to do this, and they're taking a page out of Turki Alalshikh. And Bob Arum's always done this. This is not something new for Bob Arum. Bob Arum's worked with promoters his whole career. He's always been able to separate personal from business. He would do fights
even with his fighters.
Yeah, he would do fights with Don King, and he was never buddies with Don King throughout over the years. They were, vicious enemies, but he still made fights when they made sense. And he never. So it's always been, Al Heyman, who, in my opinion, and PBC, they operate off of emotion. They when you have people like, a lot of the things that Floyd Mayweather said over his career, like, I don't want to make another promoter rich. We want to do it. We only care about what we're doing over here. If you want to fight us, you got to fight us on Showtime. You got to fight with PBC. All these things that he said, in my opinion, were basically he's just been a mouthpiece for Al Heyman. Floyd Mayweather is an Al Heyman creation, in my opinion. Obviously, he the ability and all that, it's on him. But all of the business strategies that Floyd Mayweather has implemented over the years, even the things he says, I think they all come from Al Heyman, right? And a lot of these fighters who tried to emulate Floyd Mayweather, saying the same things he's saying, the whole A side, B side, all this stuff was, I like to say, was a Floyd Mayweather construct, but in essence, it was really an Al Heyman construct. And we saw what these Al Heyman principles in the last 20, 30 years have done to boxing, particularly in America. We saw what happened. And as a result of that, that's why you have Turki Alalshikh. Turki Alalshikh saw an opening, and he took it, and he acted on it, right? And now you have Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. They're generating more money than these American promoters.
Okay, I gotta ask you about that right now. I wanted to ask you about the fact that I see kind of something similar, but something also different happening in the UK, because there you have the two leading promoters, Queensberry, Frank Warren, Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, come together and work with each other. And we saw that great card last year, the 5v5. I was actually very excited about it. And I'm actually looking forward to another edition of it. Here's the difference, though. The way this is being presented, at least from the reports I've been reading and the videos I've been watching, is that this collaboration here in the United States is not going to happen under the umbrella of Riyadh season, but kind of outside of it. Whereas the collaboration between Matchroom, Queensberry, Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren happened kind of under or within, I should say, the orbit of Turki Alalshikh. Doesn't it seem, Joe, like it's happening outside of the orbit here in the U.S.? And before you answer that, I want to remind everybody to come on over to YouTube. All right. If you were on X, come on over to YouTube, hit that retweet button, hit that like button, and come on over. So to kind of emphasize that point, Joe, I want to go to a clip just from a day or two ago on Talk Sport in the UK. I know you watch Talk Sport. I watch Talk Sport. This isn't the A team here. This is kind of the B or C team discussing it. But it's Talk Sport nonetheless. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. Here we go.
Boxing promoters. The wonderful two in Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. They were both live in the studio on Breakfast, actually. The pair had famously never met each other face-to-face, supposedly until the end of 2023, but are now working together as best mates. In a moment, we'll hear what Eddie Hearn says could be next for AJ, but first the pair discussed how their friendship had grown in recent years.
There was no relationship. There was never even a phone call.
Never spoke.
Really, no. And it was like, we just established that we were never going to do business together. He weren't going to speak to me and I weren't going to speak to him. And that's basically how it was. Until Turki Alalshikh slapped us both around the chops and said, right, I don't care about what is this stuff between you two. Mm-hmm. Get on with it. We can make boxing great. Let's all work together. And, listen, at first it was a reluctant handshake. Mm-hmm. And then it's moved on to, actually, this is great for the business, this is great for the sport, this is great for our fighters, and personally, I quite like you. And we like having a bite to eat. And that's the, I think a lot of people said to me over the years, my dad included, you'll like Frank, you love he's a great company over a bite. And I think we just understood the passion that we shared, which was boxing.
What I liked about that was he said, Turki slapped us around the face. He failed to lead
So there you go. Like, in that case, Turki was forcing them to come together. In this case, you're saying, Joe, that Turki is forcing them to come together. But it's kind of a different way that the force is occurring. Because, again, all of those big fights that were collaborations, essentially, between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren were occurring within kind of Turki's sphere of influence, within the kind of Riyadh season orbit. That's not kind of what I'm hearing about this, emerging relationship between Top Rank and PBC. What are your thoughts? Go for it.
Think about this, right? If you're Turki Alalshikh,
yeah,
right, you're focusing on the global market right now because you have a lot of the biggest events that you've been putting on have been, right? They have been. In foreign markets with the UK fighters and some of the Japanese fighters and a lot of the Mexican fighters as well, right? And even Eddie Hearn has been doing a lot of international shows. He's been doing shows in Mexico. He's been doing shows in Australia. He's been continuously doing shows in America as well. So what Turki Alalshikh is doing here is he's creating a brand, a global brand, right? And I think with these apps, right? A lot of the xenophobic boxing fans, a lot of the nostalgic boxing fans, they don't like what's happening right now. But there's a way to fix it. And right now, what's being done with Top Rank or supposedly being done with Top Rank and PBC should have always been done. It should have been consistently done. And it's not Bob Arum's fault. It's always been PBC's fault. And I think as time goes on, these fighters are going to start to realize, and they already are starting to realize that the Floyd Mayweather blueprint only works for Floyd Mayweather and only worked for Floyd Mayweather, and it can't be replicated through the majority of fighters. So these guys,
Floyd Mayweather also fought for other promoters, and he fought fights against other promoters' fighters. Let's not forget, Floyd Mayweather, even when he was Money Mayweather, was fighting under Golden Boy.
But
Golden Boy was the promoter of most of those fights.
Correct. But once he decided to go it on his own.
You're talking about the exclusive Showtime contract.
Showtime contract.
Where we saw him versus Andre Berto, versus Robert the Ghost Guerrero. Yeah, I don't see a lot of fighters being able to do that.
So the thing is this. this whole thing about just everything is going to be on everything is going to be in America now. You have to everything's going to be just this a one like the Floyd Mayweather blueprint, right? Where fighters can just say either you give me this amount of money or I don't fight. Like these fighters are trying to use leverage that they never had, and they thought they had it, and it's the Floyd Mayweather blueprint. Now Terrence Crawford, to his credit, has somewhat adopted the Floyd Mayweather blueprint, and it didn't. It took him a long time for it to work, right? And he was getting paid very well over at Top Rank. I mean, he's making $3-4 million a fight, but once he fought Spence as a free agent, that's when he started really making the big money, and he's made big money against Madrimov. So by him adopting the Floyd Mayweather blueprint to some degree, fighters that aren't on his level are trying to adopt it too, but it's just not. It's not going to work for everyone. So you have to be a special elite fighter like a Canelo Alvarez or like a Terrence Crawford for it to work. And these guys are going to have to realize that they can't have this same type of I'm just going to wait it out. If I don't get the fights I want, then I'm just going to sit it out, and either you pay me or I don't fight. They just don't have that leverage, and they're going to have to adapt moving forward. And I think a lot of them have adapted moving forward, because you saw once Boots Ennis left PBC, he's fighting more frequently now. He's getting paid more money because people are starting to see who he is. He's actually fought in his hometown with Eddie Hearn. So he's being moved, and he's just had much more better career opportunities under Eddie Hearn than he's had under PBC. It's pretty evident.
Let me be a little bit more explicit with my statement and with my question, because it was a loaded question. Is this not emblematic, symptomatic of the fact that Turki Alalshikh sees stronger business, better business, more robust business in UK boxing than he does in US boxing? Because like I said, Matchroom, Queensberry were absorbed into the Riyadh sphere of influence. It was Riyadh season. It was Turki Alalshikh that was making the investments into those huge shows, right? Whether they were in Riyadh or whether they were in London, like Dubois knocking out AJ at Wembley, right? With the US market, what we're seeing is, you guys, I guess, better work with each other if you want any kind of significant fights, because we're doing our thing over here in Riyadh. We're doing our thing over here in London. And when we do go to the US, we don't really need to work with Top Rank and PBC. We'll just do a big show between Canelo and Crawford. We don't need you guys. That was kind of my question, because I think what it's showing is that the Saudis are more invested in UK boxing than they are in US boxing at this point.
But that's going to change.
With obviously exceptions like Canelo and Crawford, or at least they're more invested in Matchroom and Queensberry than they are in Top Rank in the PBC. Joe, go for it.
Everyone's harping on the whole thing of the statement where Dana White said, and I think Tony Khan said, and to some degree, I even think Turki Alalshikh kind of implied and alluded to this, that they made the statement that boxing is broken. And then you had people like Frank Warren come out and people like Eddie Hearn say, oh, well, boxing's not broken. I think they need to be more specific when they say boxing is broken. American boxing is broken. Would you agree with that? You're muted, sir. You're on mute.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think it's been broken for a while, actually.
So if anyone wants to argue that American boxing is not broken, then I make the argument. Explain to me how it's not broken. Because again, all of the inactivity that we've seen in recent years has been the overwhelming majority, American-based fighters. particularly PBC fighters, if you want to be specific. And this isn't a tribal thing about, this promoter versus that promoter. We have to look at data. What boxing company, boxing entity has put on the fewest amount of shows in the last 2 years? And who has charged the most amount of money for events? Who's given you the least amount of value for dollar over the last 2 years out of all the promoters? It's almost undeniable, and I would say it is undeniable that it's PBC. So PBC has to do something, or they will cease to exist. It's that simple. They will cease to exist if they don't work with Top Rank. And they should even take it a step further and say, we're not just going to only work with Top Rank. But once again, they're making a mistake, I believe, right? They're making a mistake, I believe, because now they're going to combine forces with Top Rank, and they're going to try to compete against Turki Alalshikh. They're going to try to compete against DAZN. And I would argue, okay, I mean, again, it's a free market. Of course, there's going to be competition. But if compete means not work with, right? And if competing means having an isolationist type business model where it's just going to be us and Top Rank doing shows together, and we're not going to work with other promoters or Turki Alalshikh fighters or fighters that with Eddie Hearn. When I say Turki Alalshikh fighters, I mean fighters who are under that DAZN banner. If we're gonna not do fights on DAZN, right, and we're only gonna do it very sparingly and not make it the norm, then is that in the long run gonna be beneficial to the business? And I know Bob Arum has said that they don't mind doing fights over DAZN, but they don't want to give them exclusivity. And they want to do deals with multiple platforms. So what does that mean? Does that mean they're going to because Netflix has already jumped into the fray? Again, I heard HBO Max is going to come back. So you're going to have HBO Max, you're going to have Netflix. You already have Netflix, and you have Amazon. But Turki Alalshikh's already said like that. We'll do shows with Netflix too, right? So this is going to get very, very interesting. But by PBC working with Top Rank, that's great, but that's not going to be enough, in my opinion, for them to be sustainable long term. They're going to have to go above and beyond and do even more outreach to other promoters and other platforms and other entities. In my opinion,
this here, Joe, is 6 years ago, courtesy of Fight Hype. Got to give them credit for the video. Let's have a look. Let's have a listen. This is 6 years ago. Bob Arum talking about DAZN and ESPN. Here we go.
Late husband Dan Duva, and Egas promotes a lot of fighters that fight for it, including Lomachenko, and HBO is going out of business, and so it was natural that they would see what we have to offer. We talked to ESPN, they were all for it, and so it was relatively easy to make a deal. The point is that we are not like other entities. We're not looking to take away promotional rights from people like Kathy or Yvonne Michelle. We want to just put the platform on so that they can put the fights on ESPN, and ESPN can get the best possible fights.
And happy birthday, Bob. How does it feel to still be the best promoter in the business?
Well, what it feels is like when you're 86, you say, I just hope I'm around for another year. Well, I'm around for another year. So now I'm saying I can't wait till I'm 88.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, guys, we got to break it down.
There you go. So it was easy to put the ESPN deal together back then, 6 years ago, Joe. Things have gotten a little bit more complicated now. I mean, ESPN, Disney, they're trimming the fat over there.
Well, UFC, they're talking about,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is UFC is going over to Netflix because UFC has been very unhappy with the production over at ESPN. They're unhappy with a lot of things over at ESPN.
Maybe ESPN's not happy with the UFC.
No,
Maybe Dana's just spinning it.
No, because there's been issues. People have said this when they try to buy pay-per-views on the app. There's been some technical issues with the app, and
The app sucks.
yeah.
I'm
So
sorry. Like, the only thing I watch, Joe, on ESPN Plus is boxing. Make it make sense that
well,
every time I log in, I got to do a fucking scavenger hunt to find a fight.
and also there's been issues with the
Excuse
sound.
my language. Sorry. Pardon
Yeah,
me.
there's also been issues with the sound going out, buffering. So I got to give credit. I've been very critical of the zone over the years, but I've seen major improvements with the app over time. And I think I have not seen those improvements with the ESPN Plus app. So again, a lot of people will have gone on Twitter, particularly people who tried to buy pay-per-views, and they've been complaining with the ESPN Plus app, and so is Dana White. And that's going to affect the bottom line. If people are having issues buying pay-per-views and things, the zone had its growing pains too, but they've appeared to have corrected a lot of their problems and their mistakes and their issues, whereas ESPN really hasn't done that. So I think there's room for improvement, room for growth, and the fact that they're going to be losing not only Top Rank, but they're going to be losing UFC as well because Dana White's decided that they don't want to move forward with the deal. Right? They could have done the deal, but they didn't want to do the deal. That's what Dana White said. Whether you want to believe that or not, whether you want to say it's mutual or not, I can only go off what people have been saying. People have been complaining about that app a lot, not just you, other people that I talk to.
It's a terrible app.
And then you go on Twitter and you hear this, a lot of the UFC fans saying, "Oh, I tried to buy the pay-per-view, I couldn't do it. There was a glitch. They bumped me out. I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I was experiencing buffering." So there's been a lot of complaints about the app. So I understand why Dana White would look at that and say maybe this isn't the right move to continue moving forward with these guys.
Well, the difference too with Dana and the UFC is the UFC has its own app.
Yeah.
Top Rank doesn't have its own app that I'm aware of.
Not that I know of, no.
Does any promoter have its own app?
Not that I
ProBox has an
ProBox has an app, yeah. That's
so
correct.
I don't know, maybe that's the way to go, right? Developing your own app, being your own distributor, collecting your own pay-per-view revenue. I don't really know.
I've heard Eddie Hearn, I think, mention that, and I've heard other promoters mention that, like we'll create our own app or whatever. So
right. And honestly, if YouTube revenue shares were better, YouTube would be a great platform for promoters to stream their fights.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the revenue share on YouTube was better, but I don't really know what the full revenue share is. I just know by being a YouTuber myself that YouTube doesn't really give you a lot of money. Like let's say you do 1 million views on YouTube for a live fight, right? What do you think you get for that?
Well, I have to say that the YouTube revenue has improved a lot. I think I want to say at this point, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 70-30 split now, where before it used to be horrible.
Who keeps 70?
Let me see. I think it's 70 on the. Let me see what the YouTube split is. I think it's 70 in our favor.
Really?
Yeah, YouTube revenue split. I was reading this before. YouTube revenue split. Yeah, I'm curious to see.
I would be surprised because I've watched videos on this with people with way bigger platforms than us.
Yeah.
Some of them are doing quite well on YouTube. Others, not so much. It also depends on what advertisers are interested in your content because they kind of pigeonhole you. Boxing YouTube definitely doesn't pay, but let's say you're doing like makeup reviews or whatever on your channel, you'll make more money.
Okay, so creators receive 55% to 45%, which I mean it's not great, but it's not horrible. It used to be where I think, if I remember correctly, YouTube used to get 60%, and they only used to give the creators like 40%. So
okay,
it's still not great, but it's okay. 55, 45. They are giving you more of the percentage, so that's not horrible. Okay, then it says if a partner turns on fan funding features, reviewing, commerce, YouTube will pay them 70%. So that's what I read. So if you're a fan-funded channel, YouTube will pay you 70% of net revenues from channels and memberships, super chats, super stickers, and super thanks. Okay. So in certain instances, you can get a 70-30 split. And I think the super chat is a 70-30, and super stickers and super thanks, those are 70-30s. But again, if you turn on that feature where you become a fan channel, a fan funding channel, then you'll get 70-30 with YouTube. So
got it.
They're not great, but they're better than what they used to be.
So let's wrap this up by getting really to what the actual fans of the sport care about, the matchups, right? Boxer A versus Boxer B. You look up and down Top Rank's roster and you think about fighters on the PBC, I can't even say roster, but PBC fighters. I guess it's a roster. I don't really know what you call it. I mean, what are the fights that kind of scream out to you between PBC people and Top Rank people that you'd really like to see? Well, the first one I can think of, I don't know the likelihood of this happening. I don't think it would happen, but I'd like to see it. David Benavidez, PBC versus Arthur Beterbiev, Top Rank. That's a good fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We heard Bob Arum in that interview talk about Keyshawn Davis at 135, right? Against Edwin De Los Santos, I'd rather see him versus Tank Davis at 135,
of
right?
course. Yeah.
You think about Inoue at 122. Anybody in the PBC you'd want him to see him fight? Not so much for me.
Would you mind seeing the Inoue move up to 126 and fight Fulton in a rematch? That would be interesting.
That would be interesting
at the higher weight, right?
It would be interesting. I think that's probably the best fight for Inoue at featherweight if he is going to move up. But there was that awards dinner out in Japan where him and Nakatani appeared to have agreed to fight with each other.
Well, think about this.
Yeah.
Look at how much better Fulton did in the rematch with Brandon Figueroa at 126 than when they fought.
He looked like a different fighter.
Looked like a different fighter, right? So
yeah,
I want to give him the benefit of doubt. Will he beat Inoue? Probably not. I mean, obviously, I think most people would favor Inoue substantially in that fight, but would it be a better fight at 126? That's what I'd love to see. So I don't hate that fight. It's not something that I'm clamoring for, like it's a must fight I have to see, but I would be interested in it at 126. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, I would be interested in it as well. Papa Chubby saying Shushu versus Barrios. Which Barrios?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm confused about that one. And the only Barrios that comes to mind is Mario Barrios with the PBC. So that's a 126 to 147 jump. That fight doesn't scream out to me, Papa Chubby, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I think we will
Shushu versus Stephen Fulton Jr. maybe?
Yeah. I think we will get the Juntu versus the Inoue fight. I think we will get that fight, but I think we'll get it probably later.
So I'm just thinking about what are these earth-shattering fights that the PBC Top Rank collaboration would create. And to be quite honest with you, the biggest one for me is Beterbiev versus Benavidez, and I don't see the PBC doing that.
Yeah.
What other big fight is? So, I mean, really, what are we talking about here? That's what I'm kind of wrapping it up with here. I mean, what fights are screaming to you, oh, I need to see this PBC guy versus this Top Rank guy? To be quite honest with you, I'm seeing better fights between Top Rank and Matchroom, Top Rank and Queensberry for the most part. Like, I'm just not that interested in a lot of the PBC roster at this point.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, I'm just not.
No, not many people are.
So Tom here is talking about Ball versus Inoue. That's my point. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ball is a Queensberry fighter. Inoue is a Top Rank fighter. What is PBC even really bringing to the table? Okay, so Papa Chubby's bringing up one here. Brian Norman Jr. versus Mario Barrios. Yeah, I get that's a good fight.
That's not. It's
not a pay-per-view fight. It's not a mega fight.
They've already talked about that as a unification. It's already been mentioned.
Right. Loma versus Tank. I mean, we've been talking about this one for years. I mean, is that one really going to happen? I'd like to see it. Will it happen? I don't really know. What is the 5v5 in Top Rank versus PBC? Exactly.
They can't even probably. Well,
Teo versus Gary Antoine Russell. I mean, I'd like to see it. You'd probably like to see it. Is it the biggest fight in the division? Is it something you're screaming that needs to happen? And also, I hate to throw a spanner in the gears here, but Teo signed a deal with Riyadh Season, and Top Rank is getting a percentage off of it. He's pretty much a Riyadh Season fighter at this point. Top Rank is just collecting a percentage on Teo. They're not really actually. He signed a 3-fight deal. I think everybody knows that. So
yeah,
that wouldn't even be included in this. At least not for the next 3 fights.
That's true.
So there you have it, guys. That's the news. Top Rank, PBC coming together. My whole kind of analysis of it, if I'm going to offer it, is that it's just not going to be like Matchroom Queensberry in the UK. Just I don't even see it as anything near the same thing. There haven't been the rivalries between Matchroom and PBC. We haven't really had the back and forth with the media interviews like we did for a few years. Thanks to people like Coogan and Umar and all of the, back. We haven't had that here in the United States between.
No, we don't have it.
Between PBC and Top Rank. So I just don't see it as big of a deal. And I also, to be quite honest, would rather see Top Rank really doing business with Matchroom and with Queensberry, because that's where I see most of the fights. Am I against them doing business with PBC? Absolutely not. But most of the compelling fights that are out there for Top Rank fighters, I wouldn't categorize them as PBC versus Top Rank fights. Go for it, Joe. Close us out.
Yeah, even with the combination, like you said, the collaboration, I should say, it's still going to be a tall task for them to compete with what Frank and Eddie are doing over there, because we no American fighter was in the Forbes list, right? And what was the biggest fights of 2024 last year? It had to be you can say, oh, nobody knows who Usyk is, or nobody knows globally who Fury is, and these guys aren't big in America. Name another event in America that did better than those 2 fights.
Yeah, I honestly can't think of it.
Right.
Can't
the last
do it.
big event, the last gigantic event that was done, an American event, was Ryan versus Davis. And ever since then, name even Canelo fights, with all due respect, they haven't been huge successes in comparison.
Not in Canelo terms.
Yeah, not in
Canelo terms.
Yeah, not into what he's done in the past.
No. So there you have it, guys. That's hour number 1. We're going to do hour number 2 over on my channel, and we're going to be talking about heavyweight boxing. We've got a big heavyweight fight, definitely in terms of the sizes of the gentlemen that are going to be fighting each other. I mean, we've got 2 guys that are both 260-ish, or at least over 250. 2 guys with heavyweight title aspirations, 2 guys who are in the conversation about heavyweight titles, or have been for the last few years. I'm obviously talking about Filip Hrgovic and the juggernaut Joyce. I'm also going to give you my top 5 heavyweight ranking. I'm going to ask Joe for his top 5 heavyweight ranking, and we're going to talk about other fighters in the division, namely Usyk and Dubois, and what's going on with them. Ajit Kabayel, Big Bang Zhang, those guys are out there still. So maybe even AJ. So hour number 2, heavyweight boxing card later today. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to talk about the heavyweight division at the beginning of April in the year 2025. So thank you for hour number 1. Link is in the box. We'll see you for hour number 2. And see you in a moment, guys. Take care.